We have a very diverse panel, very diverse expert panel from academia, from industry, both investor and big industry. And so we have the next 20 minutes to hear a variety of perspectives regarding the topic, which is how people see the future of emotional well-being products and the industry. And we want to first start with highlighting some major trends. So what are you seeing, and I'll start with Gilad and Mike, what are you seeing as some of the major trends in this space, and what do you think people are really looking for?
I run a very early stage set of venture funds based in the US looking at the emerging science of health and happiness. And the fund is based on two trends that we see, sort of overarching trends. One is the change in behavior of the rising generation. So there have been references this morning to the levels of stress in the lives of the rising generation. They're higher than they've ever been for most of that generation, and they're reacting to that in a number of ways. And in the way they undertake fundamental parts of life, how they date, how they mourn, how they buy, how they interact with one another. And on the other side, we're seeing changes in science that to us represent potential breakthroughs. The movement of science from inside hospitals to your head or your wrist or even inside your body. And we think the two of those together represent potentially revolutionary changes in care and the way people go about their day-to-day lives, and that's what we're focusing the fund on.
Gilad?
Thanks. Maybe just to add on to Mike's point, I mean, the trends that we're seeing are really the necessity for people to find these solutions, products, technologies which can allow them wellness. And given that this is sort of a tricky area because you're talking about emotion and resilience, etc., as you know, I mean, what we're doing in Joy is actually going out there and reaching out to the basic science on the one hand, plus entrepreneurs on the other hand, and specifically in Israel, this ability to combine both the science and the entrepreneur side, and going out there and actually creating and building tailored products which can allow this so-called tricky trait of allowing dealing with stress and allowing emotional regulation. So it's a challenge, but I see, as we saw today morning as well, more and more ability to really go out and build these products.
Thank you. Nava, you've been in the wellness space maybe longer than all of us, and you are involved in both conducting research as well as doing a lot of education in the space. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what you've seen in recent years, both in terms of awareness and some of the challenges that come with bringing this to the masses.
Yeah, I think we can learn a lot from the mindfulness movement, which is like maybe a head spear of the wellness movement because it's around for a few decades and very popular in the last decade. And we've been there, and I think that we see, first of all, that people are becoming much more aware of, first of all, their stress and the ability to change. And I think this is why a lot of apps and products that are already out there are gaining so much popularity. But we also see, and I think this is a major hurdle, is that people actually understand their stress, understand they can change their stress, but they don't actually manage to do it. So there's an understanding, a willingness, and there's a very difficult thing. And I think it's been around 1,000 years, people are trying to transform themselves and actually finding that it's not simple. And there's a lot of deep psychological issues there that we also find in the mindfulness world. I've been practicing for more than 20 years, and it has changed my life, transformed my well-being, made me a happier person, and still, in the morning, I wake up and I'm like, maybe I'll stay in bed and not, right? So, and understanding this point is crucial. What makes us, why don't we really take care of ourselves? And why do we start taking care of ourselves when we're in a really bad situation, but once we come to a situation where we're what I call comfortably numb, we stop. And I think whoever is here, entrepreneurs, whoever will understand this deep psychological point and will be able to find a way to go around it will do the big thing. And in terms of other hurdles, I think we know from the science of well-being that is emerging how much the body is important for well-being. And we know how much attention is important for well-being. Attention to myself, internal attention, attention to others, and external attention. All of these are very important. We know how much social relationships are important for well-being. But most of the products that at least I see when people come to my office to ask me what I think is actually taking us away from our body, hijacking our attention, and driving our reward system away in a way that is not necessarily beneficial and bringing well-being, maybe for the short term, but not for the long term. So I think these points should be taken into account when we try to think of new solutions about how we find a creative way not to take the attention of the person from their bodies and not to hijack the reward system.
Thank you, interesting. So before we talk a little bit more about the technologies and what's enabling this innovation, there are several, let's say, major stakeholders that are probably driving this movement forward. Obviously, academia and educational systems are critical, both in terms of advancing research, but also educating the community, like you do at the Muda Center. And obviously, investors are on the other side pushing innovation. I'll turn to Benjamin and ask you, how are corporations, from your experience at Amdocs, how are you seeing that corporations are now raising awareness or driving use of emotional well-being products in the workplace? And you have a specific experience that you can share with us about that.
And I'm happy to tell it here because probably this is the only country where people would know what Amdocs is. A very important software company. And I make this joke because in this IT sector, we are in this fierce war to get to the best talent possible. So basically what we do every day of the week is to see how we win the best people from our competitors, the Oracles and the Dells and the Microsofts of the world. And it became a focus on things that we were not expecting. We are pampering people in this sector. I feel a father more than a director. And we need to provide and make very clear that we are a better option for the talent than other companies. And then we need to see them as high-performance athletes of the brain, because that's what a software engineer is. And because of that, we are always looking for these things. From the office, the way we design our office is far from the technology parks on the outside of the city. Ours, for example, is in a shopping center. I always make the joke that we're the only software company in the city that on top of meeting rooms, we have cinemas and casino and a haircut parlor and these places, because the experience, the everyday experience is important for us. And it's all about the productivity, right? So the story is looking to compete in an environment where Amdocs is not a known company, it's not a sexy brand as HP is, or IBM, or Microsoft. We need to do something different. And I met a group of entrepreneurs in Guadalajara that created a company called Happiness actually. And they come from a personal experience. The mother of the founder had a clinical depression for a very long time, and he lived his childhood and adolescence with this experience. After I don't know how many things they found in meditation, the only solution that brought them their mother back. And this experience was translated into a virtual reality experience to help people meditate. That was the origin of it. So when they told me the story, I thought that was an interesting idea. So we brought it to the office. Because if it worked with humans, I thought that it could work with engineers as well. So we are always working on productivity programs. I was sharing with you a little bit before. A typical program that we put together, and we invest a lot of money on this, bring us a productivity increase of 5 to 8%. We have it measured. It's, this is not neuroscience, but it's business metrics. It's 5 to 8%, and we invest thousands of dollars for that. My surprise came when this program, which was basically putting a relaxation room where people could take this experience designed for software engineers, that our productivity levels for this pilot group that we put together as a recommendation of the startup, increase our productivity in 12%. And the cost of that was peanuts for us. The cost of this relaxation booth was probably $1,000. What I saw over there was that there's obviously a direct connection between the stress of the person and their level of productivity in an industry like ours, which is basically high performance athletes of the brain. This was an accident. We were not really interested on this specific thing, but among a number of things we've done, improving processes and investing a lot in the office and doing, all these things, this was the best investment we did. And for me was the realization that at the end of the day it's about balance, is the person, is the focus, and the stress. So I'm not an expert. I learned today that I need to ask them to do it while inhaling on the right nostril. But that experience put us to do it in other offices. Actually, I'm here this week in Israel because we're importing the idea from our office in Guadalajara to put it to work over here.
Great, thank you very much. So it sounds like one way to bring these products and experiences to improve people's well-being is through the workplace. But we also heard that it's very challenging, and maybe it's easier when it's being offered to you in the office, but what about, during the rest of the time when you're not at work? How can we get people to make these changes in their lives, and knowing what we know about the difficulty in creating new habits? What do you all see as or is there some kind of a secret sauce or some kind of a way that we can get people to take care of themselves better, or to start adopting products and start using them on a daily basis as part of their routines?
Well, one of the things we're seeing is the emergence of products that don't require the people to do anything. So a mix of neuroscience can see your brain waves. Biological science can pick up your respiration patterns, your heartbeat, ambient ideas. So the notion would be folks are at their desks working, the system is looking at how they're breathing, what their brain waves are, and choosing sounds or aromas that might make people more productive or calmer. Prison yard. And the individual doesn't actually do anything except be an individual in that space where these technological choices are being made on their behalf. And that's really revolutionary, because part of this problem is people don't do what they say they're going to do. They don't make. Yeah, but it's a different approach, and we're seeing a lot of these kinds of things.
So maybe a bit of a different thought. Eventually, I think, and this will probably take time, but we're talking about change in habits for a much more, for hopefully a more substantial feeling, more substantial emotion change. And you know, past 10 years, we see people doing sports, etc., and it's sticky. I mean, from a physiological and biological perspective, it's sticky. We need to find a way to allow this active mood regulation to become sticky, either with products or products which are simply facilitators and aids to allow us as individuals to practice and to have a different state of mind, to make it part of a habit, an ongoing daily habit of relaxation and knowing how to feel better. So maybe longer term, but something to look forward
And maybe
to.
what will help us is, you know, similar to being able to see that physical fitness helps us lose weight or look more like we want to look or feel better. Maybe if we're able to see somehow some quantitative results from some of these new products or experiences, maybe they'll convince us, right, that they're worthwhile doing. So maybe some of that feedback, if we incorporate the feedback into the products, that could be one way that we can convince people that it's a worthwhile habit.
So I would like to suggest also that maybe investment in changing the culture, which I think could happen through the education system. If a child is engaging in their well-being and in cultivating well-being throughout school, when they become an adult, they will know that when I'm stressed or if I have a difficulty, I know I can work on it. Oh, and there's all kinds of products that can help me, but I have this, like you say, the habit of doing this. I just want to say another comment, somehow reflecting on this dream that we can have people passive about their well-being and remind us about, for example, all the world of digital courses, you know, Coursera. Yeah, people imagined that we can revolutionize the world with education, which we don't have to have live teachers. We just need, you know, great courses, and people will in Africa and in faraway places will have the best education. In the end, not a lot of people are actually finishing these courses. So I do think we have to understand deeply the human psychology and also neuroscience. I don't think neuroscience can say today that you can change your brain without some active engagement. That said, I would like to make the point of ethics in this. I think the venture that all of us are interested in is to make this place a better place, because there is a continuum between well-being and psychopathology, and we have to take responsibility for this. We might have an idea to make people more well, but in the long run, we actually will make them less well. Because if we because we know that psychopathology goes together with unregulated attention system, with large unregulated reward systems. And if we take people and we engage them in ways which we think are bringing well-being, but actually can, in the long run, take them to the other place. And I think here it's the place to talk about, and maybe Joy Ventures could be a leader of that, of also talking about regulation. In clinical ventures, there is regulation, how we won't make our clients worse. But in well-being, it's like we're taking healthy people. Why should we have regulation? I think we need to have also an ethics code, an ethical code about responsibility that we're going to take here, about how we will take responsibility for the long-term well-being and wellness of people, and not just make them comfortably numb for now, but unwell for long-term. And this is a very important point for the young people here that are thinking of going into this, to be entrepreneurs in this field.
Great.
And adding just a quick comment on, from the perspective of the industry, an opportunity we have on this regard is we're taking a more active role enabling real possibilities for this to happen. The one phrase I've heard the most after we started with these things from people in the center is, I'm too busy to be well. And that phrase scares me. I heard it all the time. So we have started on doing things like what we call design vacations. Because the typical idea before was you find the time in the year when we have nothing to do to take your vacation, which is the moment where you don't need the vacation. So we are actually designing with our employees the best time to do it when the stress is the highest, when the project is in the most critical moment, which is counterintuitive, but it works well. We did a crazy thing just a few months ago where we had this campaign of drink at work so you can relax at home. So we brought that moment that happens after work, that thing that you do between your work and your house that you need to do so you get your house in a good mood. So we bring it to the office, and we believe we are giving this quality time our employees. The feedback we got is important. But my point is, we have an opportunity to help the discipline to happen. So when this happens systematically, people improve their habits, and suddenly they are not too busy to be well.
Great. I think we have to wrap up. Did you want to add some? Okay. So thank you very much. Before we get into the startup presentations, I want to take this opportunity to thank the entire Joy team for helping to organize the Neuro Wellness session, orchestrated by Dr. Yael Fuchs-Schlomai, my former colleague at IBT. I hope this was an enjoyable discussion for you. And back to Elliot. Thank you very much to the panelists.